Welcome again, everyone. My name again is Nikki Fortunato Bas. I'm your District 5 North County Supervisor as of January. If I haven't met you or if you haven't met my team yet, I hope that this is the start of many years of working together for the betterment of Berkeley and the entire county. So we are all here today because we recognize that homelessness is one of the most important challenges of our times. Whether you're unhoused, housed, or operate a business, there are so many ways that we need to be working together to address this issue. And we have an incredible opportunity, which is why we are bringing you together. We are here to strategize about homelessness solutions, specifically because the county has something called Measure W, which we will explain. It is an opportunity to bring literally millions and millions of dollars into Berkeley and to the county to help provide humane, dignified, and lasting solutions. And I do want to underscore and appreciate that so many of you here today are already working on this important issue. You may be working to designate places where people can go if there's an encampment closure. You might be working to develop housing together with people who are currently unhoused. You may be investing in programs that you want to make sure are delivering results. That is all incredible work. And again, we have an unprecedented opportunity with Measure W to make sure we provide the dignified housing and the real change that we all need and deserve. And so I want to acknowledge that in this space, we have 165 chairs out, so you can see that there's a lot of interest in this topic, and you all bring tremendous experience. And so just to get a sense of who's in the room and who we'll be in dialogue with, please raise your hand if you are currently unhoused or have lived experience, your own personal experience being unhoused. Thank you so much for coming. And I believe we also have folks from the Berkeley Homeless Union here. Are some of you guys here today? Yes, thank you for being here. Raise your hand if you are a service provider. Thank you so much for the work you do and for being here. Raise your hand if you're a housing provider or an affordable housing developer. Excellent, thank you for being here. Raise your hand if you are staff of the city of Berkeley or the county. All right, thank you so much for being here. Raise your hand if you're with a business in the business community. Okay, now raise your hand if you are a Berkeley or an Alameda County resident who believes that everyone deserves dignified housing and you want to do something. Okay, that's everyone. So you are in the right place. So today I want to make sure that we're focused on having a conversation with each other, focused on the values of being solution-oriented, and also making sure that we prioritize listening to each other. Next, we're going to review the agenda. Okay. So today we are going to hear from a couple of our event co-sponsors, and then we're going to hear an overview of the county's homelessness plan as well as Measure W. From there, we're going to spend the bulk of our time in small group discussions, and so you're seating around tables for a reason, and we'll explain the instructions for being in those conversations. We're also going to provide an opportunity to hear reports from your small group discussions, and then we'll close up with action steps. And again, this is really an opportunity to inform you about Measure W and what that can mean for our homelessness crisis, and to hear your feedback, your ideas, and to get to know your neighbors. And so without further ado, I want to introduce our Berkeley co-sponsors, and I do want to share that even though I've only been in office for 6 months, there has been an incredible partnership with the city of Oakland. Our mayor, multiple council members, the city manager, and many, many staff, as well as neighborhood-based organizations and community leaders. And so I'm really excited that we are here in Berkeley to have this conversation. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce the mayor of Berkeley, Adena Ishii.
Here, just up the street from my house. How many of you are Berkeley residents? Hey, okay, all right, very nice. It's so good to see you all. I'm so grateful to be here with our county supervisor as well as our council member for this district, Councilmember Bartlett. I really want to thank you for your partnership. It really means a lot. We've had so many interactions with our county partners. I think that says a lot about the leadership that you bring and the connections that you want to make here with our city. I know that Supervisor Bas has the experience of being an Oakland City Council member, so you really understand the intersection between these issues when we talk about mental health, when we talk about struggling with substance abuse, when we talk about economic insecurity. These are all things that are connected to this crisis that we're experiencing. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done here in the city of Berkeley already. Many of you know that we passed Measure O and Measure P. O was an affordable housing bond. P went towards homeless services, and that those measures have made a huge difference in our city and what we've been able to provide here. And also, of course, we couldn't do this without the partnership of the county that provides us with so many different resources. I'm really grateful to see so many of you who are service providers here in our city that receive funding both from the city and from the county. This crisis really impacts all of us. And so, it's wonderful to see folks from all different walks of life, from different fields, because we really have to work together on this issue. We know that we can't just do this individually. It's not about how we see this issue differently. It's about how we can work together to solve the crisis itself. And I just want to thank you all for showing up. This is such an important issue. I myself have experienced homelessness. It's something that's incredibly personal for me. And I'm really grateful for all of us working together to solve this issue. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing from folks. And please, feel free to reach out and be in touch with our office. My staff is actually around here, as well as many of our interns. Could you just give a wave if you're on my staff? Yeah, okay, thank you so much for being here. I'm really proud of all the work that we're gonna be doing together. So thanks all. I'm gonna pass it, I believe, to Councilmember Ben Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Welcome to South Berkeley. I love this place, love this room. This is a temple of inclusion, this place. And thank you, Victor and the CIL team for hosting us, super important. And thank you, Councilmember Supervisor Fortunato Bas, for your work here. It's tremendous. So you have to realize that 50 years ago, our state effectively stopped providing for people. It stopped making housing, it stopped building affordable housing, it stopped making medical housing, it stopped making supportive services, it stopped making mental health facilities, it stopped addiction services, and here we are. We're down the line from those 5 decades of mismanagement and disengagement with the people, and now you see around you the results. People camped out right out here, and over there, and where you live. Now, it's very rare that we have the chance to put resources where our new minds and new mouths are. Because we've devoted lots of time and thought and energy and creative circumstance to produce solutions. And we know there's a formula. They call it the 3 Ps. Produce housing. Preserve affordable housing. And protect people from displacement. Those 3 elements are the solution to solving our crisis. But what's missing is the 4th P, usually. Proceeds. So now, after years of legal battles and court struggles, we got the proceeds.
That is true.
$700 million. Let me say it again. $700 million. And there's more on the way. Right, the real number is like $1 billion, right?
1.9.
1.9, $2 billion. $2 billion for one county. That's tremendous. So a couple of things I need you to do. I need you to, one, tonight in this room, put your thinking caps on and do your novel best to share ideas and your genius and give the supervisor ideas for how to deploy this money. And the other thing, the second thing, is to go home after this meeting and link up again and engage the county to advocate for the effective use of these funds. Because right now our supervisor is on her own a bit and needs our help. Because she's pushing for what we want, what the people want, what the people need. So let's empower Nikki going forward to have a force at the board to deliver the 3 Ps, because we got the 4th. Thanks very much and welcome again to South Berkeley. Ben Bartlett.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Thank you so much, Mayor. They said a lot of what we're going to be covering today. So to get us started, we want to give you an overview of Measure W, and we'll also talk with you a little bit about the county's homeless plan. That I haven't had a chance and my staff hasn't had a chance to meet with all of you, so just wanted to share a little bit about my history. So I have lived in Alameda County for about 27 years, most of that time in Oakland, much of that time in Oakland. However, I was an organizer and advocate before I became an elected official a few years ago, and I spent time organizing here in Berkeley around environmental issues and worker rights issues. I have been very passionate as an elected official about addressing homelessness and housing affordability. And for the 6 years that I was on the Oakland City Council, including serving as council president, I was able to move forward a number of things that I think are very relevant to the discussion we're having today. Number one is this idea of public land for public good. And I know this is something that you here in Berkeley are also talking about. So in the city of Oakland, we were able to use a city-owned parcel of land before it went under construction to have and build a tiny home community for people who were unhoused. And I used that opportunity to improve what Oakland had been providing by learning from people who were unhoused. So we moved to single occupancy. We moved to providing electricity, providing running water with showers and toilets, and making sure that we had storage space and room for pets. So there's ways that we can continue to learn from people with the lived experience of homelessness and continue to improve the conditions and the shelter that we are providing. And that public parcel of land is now under construction for 2 100% affordable housing units, with over 100 units that will be for people who are currently unhoused. So those are the types of things we want to be talking about. As you heard from Councilmember Bartlett, funding is critical to address this issue. And so in Oakland, we had Measure U, that's our alphabet soup, and that's a $350 million affordable housing bond. We also know that preservation is important, so we've partnered with land trusts to preserve affordable housing. And then, of course, tenant protections, preventing people from becoming unhoused, is critically important, and that's something that I've been able to do. So I'm really looking forward to representing you on the board and to bringing that experience and commitment to affordable housing and homelessness solutions to our county. So this slide shows you a little bit of information about how homelessness continues to be one of the biggest challenges, not only here in the county, but across the state as well as the country. And we will share these slides with you over email. And so you can see here that while homelessness is still 9,450 people during our point in time count, it has slightly decreased. However, one of the critical challenges we face is that state and federal funding to address homelessness and affordable housing is decreasing. And here you'll see some of the numbers for Berkeley. So Berkeley represents 7% of the county's population and 9% of those who are unhoused. And because of the programs, the strategies, and the funding that Berkeley has been providing, both local funding and leveraging state funding, Berkeley's homelessness has been decreasing. However, I know all of you are here because you want to see us do even better than what we have been doing and make even more impact to house people. This next slide talks a little bit about the difference between the city and the county in terms of our roles regarding homelessness. So this is really just an overview. It's not a comprehensive list, But I think one of the things we want to make sure we're clear about is that cities are really on the front line of identifying specific homelessness solutions. That's where your work and the work of your mayor and your council members and your staff really come in. The county, in some regards, is a bit more of a funder providing the capital and operations services. And then specifically for encampments and homelessness response, the cities take on a significant responsibility there, from sanitation and trash collection to the actual closures. And the county really works with that system by funding a significant portion of community-based organizations. I know a lot of you are here in this room who provide services, including healthcare, outreach, coordinated entry. And Berkeley is unique in the county because you're the only city that has its own public health department. And so in terms of behavioral health crisis response, that's something the city itself does. And so one of the things we want to make sure that we do throughout this process is make sure that we are collaborating. This is not an issue that we can solve ourselves by any one agency or jurisdiction. And so Measure W is not only a funding stream, it's an opportunity for better city-county coordination and to also look at this crisis regionally and develop solutions that are regional. Next slide. Okay, so Measure W, there should be some fact sheets on your tables about Measure W. Again, it is a county-wide sales tax, a 10-year sales tax, and it was in the courts for about 4 years and cleared litigation in April. And so now the board is able to allocate those funds. It is a general tax, which means it can be spent on any county service. However, during the campaign, volunteers in the campaign were very clear that it was, really meant to solve and help solve homelessness. And so as you heard already, there is over 650 million, close to 700 million that has been collected that the board has the authority to allocate into homelessness solutions. And over the next few years, there'll be 150 to 190 million that we will be able to collect. And so it's really important that we're smart and strategic about how we leverage these funds. It's really important that there's oversight and accountability and that these resources actually deliver impact in terms of providing people with the services they need, as well as the housing, the permanent housing they need. Because we will have to go back to the voters in a few more years to extend this tax. Next slide. So here you have my office's priorities for Measure W. As I said, this funding can be used for homelessness. It can also be used for other county services, and my goal is to ensure that the vast majority, and I'm putting out there at least 90%, goes to solving our homelessness crisis. So you will hear more from Jonathan shortly about how we can spend these funds. He will talk about the county's plan around homelessness, which is our Home Together plan. And that plan has 3 elements, and they're listed right here. I do want to go over some of them so that you can generate some ideas about how we can leverage this funding. So firstly, we can put funds towards prevention, and I know Berkeley is already doing some of this work. It's really important. So we could provide funding for rental assistance, shallow subsidies, rapid rehousing, housing navigation and placement. Those are all important things to prevent homelessness from continuing to rise across the county. Secondly, intervention, emergency and interim shelter is another investment that we can make. And I know this is something that your council members are thinking a lot about in terms of how do we make sure if we're closing an encampment, there is a place where people can go. So this is about pairing shelter with encampment resolutions, as well as creating more emergency and interim housing with services. And then permanent housing is critical. We have to make sure that if you're in interim housing, you have a permanent home to exit to. And so deeply affordable housing and supportive services, together with behavioral health care, those are some of the things that we think are really important. And then lastly, we want to use Measure W funds to increase access, improving connection to services, including outreach, mobile health clinics, street outreach. That's all work that's being done, but we know we need to do more of it. And then secondly, we all know that the federal budget is being talked about right now. It's potentially going to be passed as soon as the end of this week. The state budget has just been passed. We know that we're in a situation where there are massive funding cuts to our social safety net, which is the core reason for the county's existence, really. So there's threats to healthcare access, especially for those who are most vulnerable, including undocumented immigrants. There are massive threats to mental health care prevention, including because of the implementation of Prop 1 next year. And then there's also a lot of threats to food security, including SNAP or CalFresh. And so I am proposing that 10% of Measure W help to provide the services that we know we are going to lose once the federal budget has been passed and we know what those impacts will be. And 10% of what we expect from Measure W is $190 million. So that is significant. And for those of you who are policy geeks, those of you who really watch what happens in your county government, you might know that we recently passed the county's balanced budget. We're really fortunate that we were able to do that without any service reductions or any layoffs. However, we know we need to do more to protect our safety net. And throughout that process, I tried to make sure there was more transparency and that we also looked at what are the county's fund balances and reserves so that we can really turn over every potential rock and find those resources that will ensure we have the services that we all need. Okay, next slide. And so finally, I wanted to share some values that my team is operating in as we look at Measure W. We want to make sure that we're upholding housing as a human right. How many of you agree that housing is a human right? Okay. So it's really important that we have dignified, humane solutions that center the experience as well as the well-being of those who have experienced or are experiencing homelessness. Secondly, we want to allocate resources based on where homelessness occurs, where there is need. And we know that Berkeley is the second city that is most impacted by homelessness. In addition to that, we want to focus on reducing racial disparities, because if we don't reduce the racism and the effects of racism, we are not going to be able to solve our housing crisis. Third, we want to serve vulnerable populations with the greatest need. And so those include people with behavioral health issues, seniors, families, transitional age youth, justice-involved individuals. And now that we are here, we have to remember that we also have to honor and respect disability rights and all of the work that has happened before us and ensure that also people with varying abilities have a right to housing as well. And then fourthly, collaboration with cities. We want to make sure, again, this is an opportunity for the county to partner with Berkeley and all of the cities in our county to look at housing and the solutions to homelessness as a regional issue and to really strengthen that collaboration and that regional approach. And so I believe that is my last slide. And from here, I'm really excited that we have with us Jonathan Russell, who is with Alameda County Health and specifically the director of the Housing and Homelessness Division. He's doing a lot of the listening at our board meetings, in forums like this, to make sure that our staff is able to bring forward a plan to the board that's reflective of our needs, our ideas, and our experiences. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining us.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm told I have to be louder for folks in the back. So can you guys hear me in the back? Okay, good. No. Can you now? Okay, I can only yell so loud. My voice is not that strong, but I'll talk as loud as possible. It's good to be with you all. My name's Jonathan, and I am not an elected official, so my advocacy comes in the forms of data and spending plans and graphs. So that's what I have for you tonight. But I haven't always worked for the government. I started in this work decades ago as a service provider. And I actually started when I came to Alameda County working in Berkeley, in the encampments, and ILS was another one. So I know this work well, it's close to my heart, and I'm excited to get to share a little bit about the county's plan. And I'll start with the next slide. what's this guy doing here? Who is he? I work for Housing and Homelessness Services, also known as H&H. We don't sell insurance, but we like acronyms at the county. We were a department that was created in 2019 to really serve both as the lead in creating a coordinated system in partnership with our cities, but also really to lead the strategic planning effort toward addressing homelessness in Alameda County. And today, we have more than 200 contracts a year that we're administering with 50 plus partners and working very closely with our cities. So it's a big body of work. We're spread across 4 divisions, which you can see up here. We have a policy and planning division. We have a housing services division that funds lots of permanent supportive housing and services. Healthcare for the homeless team. Some of those folks are represented here, supporting street health services and shelter health services across the county. And then our system access and equity team working to connect people to resources. I'm going to have to put this thing in my mouth to talk about it. Okay, next slide. The Home Together Community Plan. So what is the Home Together Plan? I say those words probably 6 times a day, and I hope by the end of this you'll know what it is. This is a plan that was developed by our community, including all of our city partners. It was adopted by your council and adopted by the Conference of Mayors and the Board of Supervisors. It really is intended to serve as our countywide 5-year plan to address homelessness. It was passed in 2022, and it's now in its 4th year. So we're already in the process of refreshing that plan. But what is it and where did it come from? As a roadmap, much of what the Home Together plan puts into practice is much of the policy recommendations that came from the Measure W committee and our countywide centering racial equity report. So this is in very many ways not an irrelevant thing, but ushered forth from much of that work in 2020 and beyond. And what are those priority areas? Well, Supervisor Fortunato Bas already mentioned them, and they fall into 4 primary categories. Prevent homelessness, expand shelter and services, increase housing supply, and then expand and deepen our access and coordination. And one of the things that I want to say really up front that you can see, and this comes directly from our plan, which you can find on our website. I believe you'll also have these slides too, so I'm going to breeze past some of them, and you can read them on Sunday afternoon, as I'm sure you do, like we like to read tables and graphs in the sun. But one of the things that really came forward from that plan was there is no way that we can address structural racism and inequity without addressing and creating more housing justice. Those 2 things are inextricably linked, and the Home Together plan is essentially rooted in saying, how do we address those equities? We address them by scaling our resources in proportional amounts. Okay, I know I'm running out of time. And what did we find? So through all this complicated system modeling and community feedback forums, we came up with a process to really identify over 5 years, given how much homelessness we had at the time, we found that it was going to take 24,000 new housing resources increased across our system over those 5 years. 24,000 housing units, that is. Thousands of shelter beds and otherwise. Now, that's a lot. And at the end of the 5th year, it would take an operating budget each year of more than $730 million. Hence, that's more than we currently have in our operating budget each year for homelessness. But any amount of increased resources would help. And you can see on the next slide, again, these graphs will be small, but you will get them. 2 really important snapshots that show the state of our system. The one on the right shows our housing inventory need, the projected need, to the projected outcomes. So that green bar that's sailing up toward the sky is how many permanent housing units we needed to add each year. You can see, based on our most recent data, we made our way less than 50% of the housing units we were projected to need by year 3. So we needed to be at 16,500. We're just over 7,000. So we're behind, but we've made progress. The bar on the left, or the line graph on the left, shows the discrepancy between inflow into homelessness and people who exit into permanent housing. The orange line, unfortunately, I wish it was the reverse, but the orange line is people falling into homelessness each year from 2020 to present. On average, you can see hundreds, in some years, thousands of more people are entering homelessness now in the county than they're exiting. Last year, second to last zig you see there, we were closer than ever to meeting outflow, meeting inflow. Only 350 people difference, right? But we still didn't cross that threshold. I'm going to come back to this graph on the next slide. So remember, the blue line represents that zigzag of how many people are exiting the system. At our best, last year, more than 4,000 people moved into housing, which is an amazing success, right? But we've got to prevent that inflow too. So much of what we project in Home Together, and much of what we're proposing for Measure W, and all those tables and graphs I'm talking about, are really talking about concurrent investment at scale on all of these things. That's how you really spend the time. Okay, next slide. This is another graph showing something very important that I think should be straightforward and is in common sense to many of us, but sometimes we have to say the thing out loud and put it on paper to let folks know. What this says is that you can see that zigzag line that we saw on the previous slide. That's how many people are moving into permanent housing. That's the blue line. The red line is how much new housing money for homelessness we had in that given year. So the bar graph is overlay on the housing outcomes. And what you see, first of all, and I deal with this every day, is we have this peaks and valleys effect, right? Homeless funding will come in one year, and it'll be a boom, and then it'll be a bust the next year. And that's unfortunate, but what it does show for us here is that there is this delayed impact effect. What you see in that big red line in the middle is a surge in new funding for homelessness, more than $250 million specifically to create housing for homeless folks. In 1 year, 12 months later, we housed more than 4,000 people, 1,100 more than the previous year. So there's this delayed impact effect, right, where we can see a direct correlation. You know what happened 6 months after that blue line got higher than ever? We did our point in time count. And we saw that for the first time in 10 years, we had a slight reduction. So there's this direct connection to increasing the supply and increasing the services affecting homelessness, which is a novel concept, right? That takes a dissertation to understand. Okay, next slide. This slide has a lot more detail really on those program areas we've already talked about. So what all do we mean would apply to these categories? So in prevention, as Supervisor Fortunato Bas said, emergency rental assistance, problem solving, stabilization services, shelter of all kinds, so emergency housing, or emergency shelter, safe parking, navigation centers. I opened one here in Berkeley years ago. Things like medical respite and nursing and caregiving services for folks that have complex medical needs in interim spaces. Permanent housing, all of it. Shallow subsidies for older adults. Permanent supportive housing. Deeply affordable housing for folks experiencing homelessness, because not everyone who's homeless needs the complex services of permanent supportive housing, right? We need a diversity of housing types so folks aren't waiting for that housing to be there. Access and coordination includes navigation, flex funds to help people quickly exit homelessness, coordinated entry services, if you're familiar with the jargon, that's our system for assessing and connecting people. And this last category is a little bit different, that's why it's a different color. This isn't necessarily an ongoing services category, this is what we call one-time capital investment. So this is money that would be made available as a pool of capital, i.e. funds to use to develop new resources that then would be built over successive years. So with all of that prelude, I give you the last and most complicated slide on my deck. This is, I have this tattooed on my shoulder blades. I'm just kidding. This is really a summary, a visualization. Again, you'll have these to look at it in more depth, of what an impact scenarios could look like based on the proportion of funding that would be put toward homelessness. Okay? So a couple of assumptions here. Well, I'll change my slide. Each of these scenarios, except for the bubbles on the bottom, represent an annualized investment. They also assume spending over 8 years. Okay, so imagine 8 years, each of these would be the impacts over those 8 years. The first one on the left here represents figures that we put together based on the assumptions as we had them in December 2024. Things have changed a little bit with the federal landscape since then, so things are different. But based on that assumption, we projected that if 100% of the funds were dedicated toward homelessness over 8 years, more than 2,400 people a year could be sheltered, 3,000 new housing opportunities could be created, and more than 4,750 people could be prevented from falling into homelessness every year. And there could be a one-time capital investment of $350 million to create new permanent housing and new interim sites. As I said, things have changed a little bit. So we're not living in a 100% world, and we're not living in a December 2024 world. What we have in the next slide, the real difference is that yellow block that adds and sticks through the rest of the scenarios. What that is our assumptions of funds that we would desperately need to set forward just to not lose ground based on federal funding going away. So that's subsidy loss prevention. We have a big batch of subsidies that are ending in Alameda County. That's HUD funding that goes toward homelessness that may go away. So the scenarios have really changed. Things have really tightened just based on the fact that we have to set aside nearly 25% across all of these scenarios just to keep the doors open. But you can still see there's big impacts. So the biggest changes here, and I'll finish up with this, you can see that there's still big impact and investment at 90%, but as you go down the line, there's two areas where the numbers drop the most. The capital, so that one-time bucket of funding to build new stuff that we need or acquire and rehab it, and the prevention funding, which all the way down to the 70% scenario goes down to just a couple $1 million. So those are the key considerations, and those are the levers that are what really change depending on the scenario. And I think I'll leave it at that. Good to be here.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and I appreciated your jokes too.
Good evening and welcome to Beth Baptist Church. This is the oldest Black Baptist church in Alameda County. And we count the privilege and pleasure to host honorable supervisor, councilmember, mayor, and director. And we just hope that you will bear with us. We just don't have an extra $14 million to pop over the walls. So they're very lively. And you'll be able to hear everybody and everyone clearly if you just observe two things. That's all we ask. That you respect the space. This is our church. And that you respect the face of the people in this class. Those are rules. If you do those, we appreciate that. But there's another piece. Some of you operate public spaces. We ask that as you leave, there's a separation of compost, trash, and recycling. So if you would do that, we would greatly appreciate it. I hope that you enjoy yourself. I hope that you will come back. And I am honored to be in this space with these individuals. I appreciate their work, including the mayor's on that. With that, I will now preach.
Thank you so much to Beth for organizing this forum along with my staff. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nikki Fortunato Bas. I'm about to be your supervisor. Thank you so much for coming. If you are a member of the business community, thank you for coming. And if you are a resident of Oakland or Alameda County and you want to make sure that we deliver housing for people who are unhoused and keep our community safe and clean, raise your hand. That should be all of us, right? So today, let's go to the next slide. We have a pretty straightforward agenda, and we want to make sure the values that we're participating with include being solutions focused. How often is it that we have an opportunity to actually put millions of dollars of resources into homelessness? So be solutions oriented and prioritize listening to one another, because we really want to make sure we hear everyone's perspective and your ideas. So our agenda will include additional remarks from our co-hosts. From there, we're going to do an overview of the county's homelessness plan and Measure W for myself and Jonathan Russell, who is here with us today. He is the director of Alameda County Health, Housing and Homelessness. We're actually going to spend the bulk of our time in small group discussions. That's why we organized you at tables with a few people you may not know. We want to maximize your ideas, your questions, get your feedback, and also get to know each other. And then from there, we'll do full group report out so we can hear your ideas. And then we'll wrap it up with the next steps and a call to action to really figure out how we can engage each other and push for the resources and change we want and deserve. And so without further ado, I would like to pass the mic over and introduce the Mayor of Oakland for the last 30 or 40 days or so. I am so proud to welcome our co-hosts, the Honorable Oakland Mayor, Bartlett.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you this evening. Let me thank Pastor Webster, the Beth and the family also, to Supervisor Bas, Councilmember Fife, to Jonathan, to everyone. Listen, I am just excited, first of all, that we have this opportunity to really address housing and homelessness in a way that we've never addressed it before. Just so you know, if you don't know me, when I first went to Congress 27 years ago, my top priority was housing, and I asked to go on to the Financial Services Committee, then it was banking, because the jurisdiction of housing was under that committee. And so, of course, Maxine Waters was the ranking member and then chair, and so she placed me on the housing subcommittee. And so that was day one. And so I worked on issues of homelessness from day one when no one else in Congress would do that. Then I went onto the Appropriations Committee and tried to find every single federal dollar to bring here to Oakland for housing and addressing our unsheltered population. The perspective that I've always had about housing is that housing is a basic human right. And so this moment really matters here in Oakland. Voters chose to support Measure W because they want real solutions to the very real problems that they see, that we see in our communities. And as decisions are made about where those dollars go, it's important to really ground those conversations in the reality of what the need is and where it's the greatest. And so I have to thank Councilmember Fife and our Supervisor for really listening and being part of a partnership, because, you know, Oakland County, cities in the county, we have to be stronger together, because that's the only way we're going to be able to address this real moral crisis in many ways together. And in Oakland, this need is urgent and it's undeniable. Now, I have to remind us of the statistics, which I'm glad that our Supervisor and Councilmember Jonathan know and are addressing Measure W within this context. We account for 58% of Alameda County's unhoused population, even though we're 24% of the county. 58%. there is a racial inequity in this. These numbers didn't just come out of nowhere. They reflect long histories of displacement, disinvestment, and systemic inequities that continue to shape the lives of too many of our neighbors. So when we look at these measures, we have to remember this as we talk about how we address the issues within the context of funding formulas. Since 2015, homelessness has declined slightly across the county, but in Oakland, mind you, it has increased by 9%. Every year, more than 2,500 people in our city fall into homelessness, and only about 1,500 make it into housing. That growing gap, and it is a growing gap, represents thousands of stories of struggle, instability, and survival. And for some, the crisis is fatal. 42% of unhoused deaths in our county are Black residents. Nearly 60% of those deaths occur here in Oakland. That's not just a statistic, that's a call to action. These are human beings. We also see the strain on working families. A large percentage of our unhoused are working. They're part of the, quote, working poor. 14% of Latino households in Oakland live in overcrowded conditions, squeezed by rising costs and too few affordable options. And these are really the realities, and I know that you know that we're living with this each and every day. And if Measure W is truly about meeting this moment, then Oakland must be a part of that response in a meaningful way. And thank again Supervisor Bas for making sure that meaningful is really part of this equation. Our residents are facing the hardest conditions in the region, and we need the resources that reflect that truth, and that is the truth. And this isn't about politics, it's really about impact. It's about making sure that public dollars deliver real, measurable outcomes, housing people that cannot afford the cost of housing here in the high-cost area of Oakland. It involves services that actually reach those who need them. Consistent case management services, not just today or tomorrow, but consistent because there are struggles that people need help with consistently. And strategies that are guided by equity, remember equity, right? And shaped by the people who are closest to the problem. Oakland has the leadership, we have the partnerships, and we also have the urgency to act, thanks to you. And so it's important that you continue listening, helping us, advising, asking the questions, because we need this investment now to match the need. So I just look forward to working with you. I want to stay focused on solutions because that's what this is about. We know I gave you what the issues were, the data, the statistics, but we have to have solutions. And let's make sure that Measure W lives up to the promise that helping the people and the places that need it the most. So thank you all again very much. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Lee, and it's really exciting to be partnering with you because I believe Mayor Lee had a hand in the UN Human Rights Report on homelessness, correct?
That's right.
I know a number of you out there remember back in 2018 when that came out, as you really talked about addressing homelessness from a human rights perspective, and also your past experience as a social worker. So we're really excited to partner with you on this issue.
And I actually led the effort with Bernie Sanders to establish the National Housing Trust Fund. I forgot to mention that. We have to part of the mix.
Okay. You know, not only do we have resources, we have an incredible dream team at the moment. And so Councilmember Carroll Fife is going to share some words next. And I've known her for a long time as a tenant rights advocate, among other things. And I also remember very vividly, before she entered office, how she
right. And we clearly have not met the moment because homelessness has continued to explode since that time. That doesn't mean it's time to let up. It means it's time to move forward. Because what we did not have when all of those actions were happening was the funding to do something impactful. So now, in this particular moment, we can really take a dent out of homelessness. Because if you all haven't heard this saying, homelessness is a policy decision, right? And now we have policy makers in place in the Board of Supervisors, in the mayor's office, in the city council that have real long-term relationships with each other that can do something. But it's important that we do that, in my perspective, and with the people that are sitting next to me, with you. The people who are closest to the pain should be closest to the solutions. It takes away time for me actually being able to have a dialogue with you because we need to get some things done. If we're honest, Measure W passed almost 50-50. There are about 360,000 people who voted to support Measure W. Almost 350,000 people voted against it. And I bring that up because it's going to be very critical the way that we use these dollars. Because there's half the population in Alameda County that are looking for us to fail. So we have to be very intentional, we have to be very strategic, and we have to be impactful. So we don't need you just to come to city council meetings, because the city of Oakland cannot do this alone. That's why I'm so happy that we have Supervisor Bas in this space, representing my district, District 3, and representing District 5, because we have been partners in this struggle for many years, and we have the right leadership in place to make some things happen. But she is one vote of 5. So I don't want to see y'all come in just the city council and yell at the council about what needs to happen about homelessness. I need every single person that's here to get 10 more people to talk about what the supervisor is doing and is trying to do for our city. And I'm going to divert from what she's trying to do a little bit. Forgive me, Supervisor Bas. Supervisor Bas is asking for 90% of Measure W funds to go to homelessness. Hey! Y'all